unconditional positive regard, that you are fine how you are. You are worthy. Just your existence is worthy, right? It doesn't matter all the baggage you bring with you. You're still worthy.
Yeah.
You are lovable.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Mushroom Podcast. Today on the show, we have Pam Kryskow. She is a psychedelic researcher, medical doctor. She is also the medical lead for ketamine-assisted therapy Roots to Thrive program. We had Shannon Dames on the podcast near the end of last year. They work closely together on the Roots to Thrive program there, and she was also the medical doctor who helped build out the questionnaire for a most recent microdosing study that came out. There was 15,000 participants, I believe. So she was the one that actually made the questionnaire to help everybody through the program and collect all that data as it was coming through from those 15,000 participants. So if you want to hear about a microdosing and a microdosing study through the lens of a medical doctor, you're going to want to listen to this one all the way through. Enjoy, guys. Here we are. Dr. Pam Kryskow, thanks for joining us today. Very excited about this conversation, all the work that you're doing over there at Roots to Thrive. We just discussed is going to be the branding umbrella that everything falls under, which is group psilocybin and group ketamine work that you're doing there. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Honored to be here with you today.
Awesome. Yeah. It's great to have people like yourself. I feel like you have a really interesting history, varied history of being a medical doctor, family physician, and now working and focusing mainly in psychedelics. So tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing over at Roots to Thrive there.
Right. Well, Roots to Thrive is a program that's been going for now about 2 years, and it is a psychedelic assisted therapy program. And we started the program with ketamine-assisted therapy because ketamine is a legal psychedelic-like substance. It's a group therapy program, and it's designed to be group and to have 3 psychedelic sessions within it. And we were really thoughtful on what we wanted to do with this. We wanted to recreate a community and that group journey space that probably goes back to all of our heritages somewhere. Wherever we originally came from in this world, we would have had some sort of ceremonial processes. And so the Roots to Thrive program is a group therapy. It helps return people to who they really are. It fosters unconditional positive regard, and then uses psychedelics to accelerate people's healing. So it's primarily we have people coming into it that are healthcare providers and first responders that have PTSD, depression, anxiety, addiction, eating disorders, and it fosters a healing environment for people to really get to the seeds of what is the cause of their symptoms and the trauma, so that they can get on with their lives in a much healthier way.
Awesome. And yeah, what I really like about what you guys are doing, I'm talking to a lot of people about psilocybin therapy for end-of-life care, which is very important. And I really like that you guys are opening it up to other people who are dealing with all kinds of different challenges in life. But one thing that I just heard you say there, which is actually something that a friend asked me over dinner last night, is ketamine a psychedelic? And you said it's a psychedelic-like substance. So what is where does ketamine really fall in the spectrum?
Yeah, well, we use ketamine, the terminal, like, so we think of the classic psychedelics as LSD, psilocybin, MDMA. And then, of course, you have a lot of ways you can branch them out, things that make you feel more compassionate or empathetic, like 3-MMC or MDMA. You have, plant medicines, such as ayahuasca, wachuma, peyote, and then you have fungi, psilocybin mushrooms, hundreds of different species on the planet. And then you have lab synthesized chemicals. So again, like there's multiple silos that are multiple categories you can put these things in, like LSD is lab synthesized, MDMA is, and ketamine is. Although in the last 2 years we found out there's actually a fungi that makes ketamine. So which makes sense because we have receptors in our brain that bind to ketamine. Makes sense that we are, from nature. And now we found out that, of course, the intelligence of fungi makes ketamine in Patonia chlamydosporia.
Okay.
Is yeah. So yeah, and so when we say it's like it's a psychedelic like, it means it does bring you into altered state, like a non-ordinary state of being where you can really get into where you can bring your amygdala down, you can bring your fight, flight, or flee down so that you can get into the smarter, bigger part of your brain, and kind of let the the most intelligent part of your being take
Right.
over instead of having the amygdala in an alarm state. And which is also what you see with, MDMA when you use it for PTSD. And yeah, so that I hope that helps explain it.
That's great. I had no idea that ketamine had a link to the fungi world. So that's very cool to know. Excited to share that one
Yeah,
with my friends.
I know
I'll
the
tell her the
daily
good
mushroom.
news.
Now you have another. I know it's fantastic. So now we're looking for the fungi that makes MDMA,
Right.
and
Yeah.
of course LSD, ergot.
Yes,
It's a so there you go.
yeah.
It's fungi. Fungi are responsible for everything.
Amazing, amazing little creatures those guys are. So you were a firefighter for 8 years, correct? And you shared
Yep.
with me that you never really got PTSD from your 8 years of working in that very like traumatic type of work. Um, what do you credit
Yeah.
that to?
Yeah. I was. It was interesting. It was actually a realization that I came to after I had left firefighting and went into medicine. I went into medical school from my firefighting career. And there was this one stage where was talking, to a number of my colleagues that were still firefighters, and recognizing the trauma, and like, it's repetitive trauma. It's little things. It's maybe it's not the big call, maybe it's a whole bunch of little calls, maybe it's just enough things, or maybe it's a combination of marriage issues and then a bad car accident or a bad fire. And I just remember hearing in their voice like this kind of, this stress, this underlying, like, not cope, like beginning to get to the point that not coping anymore, not happy, looking for alcohol, looking for escape. And I don't, it was just this aha kind of, in a way of like, why do I feel so good? Like, why did I come out of my 8 years? I saw horrific things. I saw things that no one should see. And yet I felt like I came out of it like, yeah, that happened. Those traumas happened. I saw those traumas, and yet I was relatively felt pretty good. And and then when I looked at it, I was like, what could it be? And it just seemed to, is it true or not? But I would attribute it to the fact that, once or twice a year, me and my, three best buddies would go hike far into the mountains, camping, and would have, a very ceremonial day on mushrooms, on psilocybin mushrooms. Sit around, talk, hike, be in nature, build a fire, sit by the river, swim, and it was like just a reconnection. And one of those friends was a paramedic, um, and another is a nurse, and another is a firefighter. So, like, we all had professions with that, and
Yeah.
yet we had this way of, in a very thoughtful way of coming together and having a ceremony
Yeah.
of, yeah, something that allowed us to probably process and talk about it. So, we didn't really think about it at the time that that's what we were doing.
Right.
But when you look back, and now that we've actually had some time to talk about it and say, like, yeah, it really did it really made a difference for how we were able to proceed in
Right.
our lives.
Right. And yeah, paramedic and a nurse, both high trauma uh, professions as well. So do they share that the same kind of operating in life now as well, with doing those, unintentional therapy, spiritual journeys with each other? Are they kind of feeling that same like ease, I guess, that you have?
Well, I can speak more broadly for others that I know that
Right.
are in these fields, and certainly, yeah, I know, like, in our program we have a lot of nurses that come through, and they get back to work, like nurses that are
Yeah.
off the job, and just like they put their heart and souls into their careers, and they just, there's only so much any human can take. The movies aren't true. You can't go and watch trauma after trauma after trauma, or killing after killing, and remain normal. It's not
Right.
normal for us to see that as humans.
Right.
So I know that from colleagues that I know that are, that are police officers, that are paramedics, that are firefighters, that they're able to reset. They're
Yeah.
able to reinstall meaning in purpose in their life, and recognize and process the trauma, and recognize that, bad things happen and life goes on,
Right.
and you can heal from that. You can, even if you made a huge mistake on the job
Right.
and you should have done better, that you still have the right to process it, process the shame, the guilt, and then
Right. Yeah.
get on with life, because you still have to show up for your children, your family, your colleagues, your friends. You still have to exist in this world, and the best thing you can do is heal and do that. So yeah, I mean, I can think of probably easily, I could probably name off like 100 people that are in, trauma related fields that stay healthy because of it.
Yeah. Wow.
And they're not doing it every day at all. They may be doing it once a year, once every
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah, that's all it takes, right? Because all of the conversations that come in between those experiences, the conversations, the realizations, the integration, that's where it really sinks in. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and also, and recognizing that you're not alone. Like one of the most challenging things for people who really get into deep depressions or burnout is they think they're alone. They think they're the only one that has screwed up, or the only one that can't handle it, and it's not true.
Yeah.
It's the reality is, like I said earlier, you can only handle so much, and it doesn't matter how big or strong or how you are, whether you're female, male, or any gender. It doesn't matter. Like there is only so much that a human can handle, and
Yeah.
you have to have ways of getting that somatic discharge out of the body, or those memories out of the body, and yeah.
Yeah, so this ties to what we spoke about earlier, your philosophy around group therapy work, in the feeling, like not feeling that you're alone in your suffering. And I think you mentioned too that the MAPS method of the one-on-one psychedelic therapy, you see it as, substandard, not as optimal as group therapy. So what is it about group therapy?
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't
No?
go that
Did
far.
I?
I would just
Sorry, I
say
don't
it's,
want to put
yeah,
words in
no,
your
no,
mouth.
no. Yeah, no. I think there's a lot of ways of doing therapy.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of solutions, and they're all good.
Okay, sweet.
And what we have to do, yeah, and so I think what I think the benefit over the, like, a one-on-one or a dyad model is that, there's something about healing in community, about that shared experience, right? And you can there's if you're working on your PTSD or your depression, or you're having your psychedelic session with MDMA with your therapist, or any psychedelic with your therapist, you know, they're there for you. It's transactional. And it's good. Like, I'm not putting it down. I don't want to get like anybody be upset about it.
Yeah.
It's a good model. And let's say you're doing that same therapy with a group, where now you're sitting around and you're talking about it and you're sharing the experience, and you're recognizing that the person, the deep shame that you carry from whatever, is, you hear the person sitting across from you in the group talking about their deep shame. And then suddenly you come to the realization other people hold shame, other people have guilt, other people have depression, anxiety, other people feel that they can't cope, other people feel like they're the only one in the world who's broken and unfixable. And you realize, I'm not alone,
Yeah.
that this is a human situation, that these conditions are human situation, and together, if we can share, we can heal. And if we can heal in a container, a group container, like in our program, the container is not only like a safety and listening to hear and not listening to fix, but also unconditional positive regard, that you are fine how you are. You are worthy. Just your existence is worthy, right? It doesn't matter all the baggage you bring with you. You're still worthy.
Yeah.
You are lovable, right? And that is really what we're craving
Yeah.
in our society, right? We're all staring at screens, lonely. We need connection.
Yeah.
We need community. We need connection. We need love. We need meaning. and we need people that will hold our feet to the fire to say, hey, you said you were going to, you know, quit smoking, or you were going to do this. And that happens in community. And that, I think it takes it to another level than when you're doing a one-on-one therapy.
Yeah.
And there's room for both. You know, people need to choose where they want to come in. But for me, I used to do the one-on-one all the time, and I would never go back because the group is so beautiful.
Right.
It's so beautiful to watch people with the same issue. They're healing each other.
Yeah.
And often myself or any of our team members on the Roots to Thrive team, we have a very big team, the facilitators, often we don't have to do anything. Like the group is doing it.
Yeah, you just hold the
right?
container.
And then we hold the container,
Yeah.
and then we assist, and we bring in the right tools and you know, figure out what is the next step that we need to take people through. But they're doing it together. And many people in our program, they leave the program and they're friends. Like they continue to hang out, they continue to do things. So, you know, it's a remedy for loneliness in our society. It's a remedy for getting connected, but also getting connected in an empowered way.
Yeah.
That, you know, we are fixable, we are better, we are healthier. We're not done. Nobody's done. There's always another level. There's always more you can do. And so, yeah, and honestly, like it's just what we have found.
Yeah.
It's what we have found to work. And I would say if it works, whatever it is, whether it's the one-on-one or the dyad model, great. Like we need all hands on deck.
Lots of options.
And wellness.
Yeah.
But I'm biased too. I'm biased. I'm highly biased in a positive way to the group model.
Yeah, no, of course. And I've never done your group work, but just hearing you say that it's like almost like the therapists don't really have to get that involved. To me, that's a major sign of how powerful the experience is, because if patients or participants, whoever we want to call them, are able to do this work themselves, it's like then of course they're going to be able to take that out to the real world and back to their lives and continue to do that work, because now they're empowered and they're not thinking like, oh, I just need to go back and talk to my therapist again. It's like they've already developed the tools to just talk amongst other, you know, regular human beings. Not that therapists aren't regular human beings, but there's a different relationship, right, between a therapist and then just you know, patients when you're in that situation.
Yeah, and I don't want people to get the wrong feeling about it. Like it is very guided. Like we use all the best, you know, psychotherapy and psychodynamic modalities, and we weave them into the program in multiple ways, and we watch the progress of how people are interacting and what they need. And you know, make sure that our facilitators and our team are guiding it, and our each week is taking it to the next level and adding more resources. But that's what we want people to do, is they come out of the program fully resourced.
Yeah.
You know, that they have a big toolbox that they can take forward with them. And we hear right away in our program in the first and second week, people saying, you know, I'm already taking some of these techniques into the boardroom, or I'm already taking them into my meetings. Or, you know, last night at our family meal, we did something totally different based on what we're doing in this program. And so, you know, you can see that right away that people can start actioning stuff. But our job is to put ourselves out of business. That's what we got to do. You know, we want to make it so that no one needs us. Yeah,
that's amazing. And yeah, I was thinking back to the thought I had there of the suffering that we can put ourselves through as humans when we think we're alone. And for whatever reason, I felt this in myself too, is if I'm not living in community, or I don't have enough people that I'm talking to about my issues, and I start to fall into a bit of a depression, I can tend to like look at others, whether it's through social media or just observing them in the world, and you start to put people on a pedestal that like they have it all figured out. Oh, if I could just have, you know, the type of job that they have or the type of relationship that they have, everything would be okay. And really it's just a strange projection that, you know, we think that other people have it all figured out. And in group work, you realize that like, oh, we're all suffering. We're all damaged in some way. The human condition is such a common experience with, you know, the pain that we all feel. Yeah,
absolutely. And social media, you know, is the worst of times right now. You know, it's one of the things we ask people to turn off very quickly. Turn off the news. You're 40% more likely to be depressed if you watch the news every day. That's not saying don't be informed, but it's saying like be careful where you get your information, where you give your precious time every
Yeah.
day. And of course, social media. I mean, social media. I mean, the I blame social media for the fact that we have 12-year-olds with eating disorders. Now, that shouldn't
No
happen.
kidding.
And people that are involved in social media, this is something you're going to be held to account for this. At some point, we're going to be looking at you and going, so you designed it this way.
Hmm.
You designed it. It was purposeful to be addictive and to have people keep scrolling, keep swiping, and it's not bringing benefit.
Hmm.
It's not bringing benefit. Like the benefit that you get of maybe seeing, your new cousin's baby pictures or something, um, is just outweighed by the damage
Mm.
done. And we just don't need that. And yeah, we just need to get back to community, like get back to people, get back to doing things with people. And and there's something else too. It's not even always like having to totally share your trauma, but also recognizing that, maybe you don't have to talk about your trauma. Maybe you can talk about where you're going in life,
Mm.
your aspirations,
Right.
and have people helping you get there. Because at some point, telling the trauma doesn't do anything.
Right.
It just re-traumatizes.
Hmm.
And so there's a balance, right? There's a balance of how do you heal? How do you take it to the next step? And then how are you forward thinking? How are you going? What are my next steps? How do I be here now?
Right.
How do I exist right here today where everything is perfect,
Hmm.
and then go forward? Like, what are my goals? What is my mission? What do I hope to do in this life? But you're right. We compare ourselves to others, and it's ridiculous because we haven't had their upbringing,
Hmm.
we haven't had their families, we haven't had their experiences, and you can't
Yeah.
know the challenges people are, and so just stop. Everyone, stop comparing yourself to everyone else. Just stop.
Yeah.
It's completely insane. Just
Exactly.
just live a good life.
Hmm.
Live your own good life.
Yeah. Just assume that, yeah, nobody has it figured out. We're all just kind of stumbling through life and everybody's doing their best, and that's all you can do as well. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's my mantra. Everyone is doing exactly the best they can in the moment with the skills they have.
Yeah. That's right on. Love it. Um, Microdosing. How
Yeah.
does microdosing um, fit into the picture? I feel like there's a lot coming out right now. I know you've worked a little bit with, or you were a big part of the Quantified Citizen, that big microdosing study that was just released.
hmm
Um, a lot of people are saying that it's placebo. How do we quantify what's going on there with people?
Yeah. Well, first off, let's get our terminology. Like, so when the study, the microdose.me study, um, 15,000 plus people in it, in, I think 97 countries. Um, it's what it is. It's an observational study. So you don't have placebo in
Hmm.
observational studies. Placebo only relates to clinical trials. So in a clinical trial, you have a placebo arm and you have an intervention arm or more. But when you're observing what people are doing, there's no such thing as placebo. So when people talk about that, they're not researchers
Hmm.
if they're using that terminology. Now, in the study like this or any survey, there's a response bias, meaning people that are interested are going to respond,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And then, I mean, even going back to placebo, even though it doesn't apply to this. Like everything in life is placebo in a
Hmm.
way. You go to a restaurant to eat, you have the belief that the food is going to be good,
Right.
right?
Response
A
bias is always
placebo.
there.
That's that. Well, and there's a bit of a placebo that if you think if this is your favorite restaurant and it's always been good, you know it's going to be good, you expect it to be good. It could be crappy and you still think it's good,
Right.
right? There's part of that, and we have a response and an expectation bias, that what we're doing will help us. But in the study, what we did is, so there was a lot of microdosing going on, for many, many years, probably historically too. Well, absolutely historically, traditionally we know that ayahuasca was microdosed with chuma microdose, possibly peyote. I don't know enough about peyote, but certainly microdosing is used. And then in Silicon Valley, LSD was being highly microdosed in the programming community. And I had met the co-founders of Quantified Citizen, and I saw on their app that they had this study that was studying wellness, our creativity, and wellness. I can't remember exactly what it was. And I looked at it and I talked to them. I said, you know what? We could do something really a lot bigger and a lot better. And I said, could you put on your app all the things that I measure as a physician? Like, and they're like what? And so we started working on that. And then we brought Paul Stamets in because he knows tons about mushrooms and microdosing. And and so what we did is put all the tests that I would do in my clinic on mood, like depression, anxiety, stuff like that. Everything that we could put on the app, something that you could answer on an app, and then all the neurophysiological things that we could put on an app, like testing your vision and your contrast sensitivity, your hearing, reaction time, memory, creativity. And so we put everything that we could think of on this, and then basically launched it. And what we asked when people joined is, we asked people if they were microdosing or not, what they were microdosing, if they were stacking it with anything, like, lion's mane or B3, chocolate, there are all sorts of things people stack with, what they were, what their dosing was, what their amounts they were, and why they were doing it. And then we had them do the assessments that were there. And we learned a lot. We had what we found out, like the preliminary data. Again, it's observational. So it's people reporting on their own impression, but some of it isn't. Like, it's people doing, like if somebody comes into my clinic and I have them do the depression scale, and I have them do the depression scale, a month later, it's a legitimate validated study. We're using the same study. We're just having people do it themselves. And they do it themselves anyways in the clinic. And then, so what we found, some of the data we found is that, depression is better. Depression scores generally dropped. Anxiety scores dropped. People reported that they had more positive moods and less negative thoughts. And then we found out that the reaction time is faster, especially in the age group over 55. So there's a TAP test that we do in medicine that we do for people who have Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, so neurodegenerative diseases. It's a tapping test, so a reaction time, and also a cadence test. And so we found, quite remarkably, we weren't expecting it, that in those that were over 55, that who were microdosing, the reaction time was getting faster as they were microdosing. And we kind of had in that case, we kind of sort of had like almost like a built-in placebo in a way, that because it was like if you're up to 55, you stayed about the same. Like you got a little bit faster, but not a lot. But once you're over 55, you started here, but you got better, like quite a bit better. And so that, when you think about it, like you get these unexpected findings, that really makes you go, what? What's going on here? And then you start to think about it and you go, well, that kind of makes sense, because you start to have your neurodegeneration starts, 40s, 50s, 60s, different diseases, different conditions, right?
Yeah.
And so the nice thing about these findings is now we can take them into clinical trials. We've got some ideas, we've got some signals, and then that was really the idea, is that if people are microdosing for all these different reasons, like a ton of different reasons, different doses, different substances, different regimes, let's find out asking a whole bunch of people all over the world and figure out what looks like is working, what is working, and then you can take it into good, high quality clinical trials. But you have to keep in mind, these things aren't yet legal, right? So the only way to study a lot of people, like when you do a clinical trial, it can be like 10 people. That's and $1 million, $2 million, $5 million for 20 people. It's a lot. So how do you get a lot of data to really help guide where you're going to do the research and where you're going to make a big impact? And we learned a lot from it. So
you make it anonymous, right? That's your.
Yeah, completely anonymous. And then we, the really fun thing about it is we had so many people reach out to us and say, hey, how come you're not studying us? And how come you're not studying this condition? And so we got so many ideas, like we didn't know what we didn't know, which is, of course, life. And so we have an international team. We have researchers from Australia, Netherlands, the UK. Jim Fadiman joined our team. We just have this fantastically wonderful, friendly, curious scientist, Zach Walsh, and the team at Quantified Citizen still. And we're taking it to the next level, like adding all the stuff we missed, chronic pain, a lot of the premenstrual challenges that women have, sexuality. a huge section on sexuality, and yeah, just really tried to fill in all the other spots because, like I said, we met with people weekly that were saying, "Why aren't you studying us? Can we be in the study next time?"
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and so it's not perfect, but it's science. It's a start. It's there's always, no matter what study you do, whether you do a clinical trial or you do something like this, you're always going to make mistakes. It's not going to be perfect. It's not meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
What it is meant to be is adding to the
Yeah.
science, and then somebody else hopefully takes it to the next level.
Yeah.
They take the information, they say, okay, let's do it even better.
Yeah.
And then they make mistakes, and then somebody else takes it and says, let's make it even better. So, I was a huge skeptic
Mm-hmm.
around microdosing, and when you start to see some of the, not some, like thousands and thousands of results, you go,
Yeah. You're
it may
listening.
not be for everybody, it may not be for every condition,
Mm-hmm.
but there's certainly some signals. There's certainly some really strong signals.
Right, and it's I was just speaking with Michael Kidd earlier today, and we were talking about how it's so important to have more options for mental health and
Mm-hmm.
wellness, right? So it's not like you can just say
Mm-hmm.
microdosing is for everyone. It's just another option. Give it a try, right? If you think it'll
Yeah,
work for you,
yeah.
go for it and see how it feels, and if it's good, keep doing it. If it doesn't work for you, you don't have to. But it's just like, yeah, the big thing with continuing to develop these different modalities of therapy, or just to have people have access to options, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We need more options, right? We're not doing that well in medicine.
Yeah, it's pretty narrow.
We have an opioid crisis, we have existential distress, we have depression levels and anxiety through the roof, higher levels than ever.
Yeah,
We have people off work because of PTSD, all sorts of things. We can do better.
yeah,
And that's what this is about. It's about, like, we can do better. Let's do better. All options are on the table, and let's study them well.
yeah. How many people, or how many different countries? You said it was 15,000 people participated. Was it? You
Hmm.
said it was just all
Yeah,
over the world.
all over the world. I believe it's 97 different countries.
97.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, really, really. I mean, the overwhelming numbers were in the US and Canada, then into the UK, Australia. But yeah, like, seriously, it was really fun to start seeing, scrolling through and seeing where everybody, like, you get down to, Uzbekistan, one person,
Yeah,
Tasmania, one person, Vanuatu, one person, just like, wow, like, it really, really made the rounds. And
yeah.
and I think the next one will really be more interesting because we've got a better quantified citizen has really done a ton of work.
Mm.
They're really doing a lot of great work here, and they've really taken it to the next level so that we can ask the questions better.
Yeah, because they've gotten a ton of feedback, right? Like you put out a study,
Hmm.
or you do an experiment, and
Yep.
you listen for like what bounces back, and that's what tells you what
Hmm.
to do next, right? And a lot of times,
Hmm. Absolutely.
yeah,
It's a forever project,
that's
right?
awesome.
Science is a forever project. So never,
Hmm.
and everybody should be scientists.
Yeah,
Everyone should be like, citizen scientists. We need everybody observing and thinking and chewing on it, like, asking the next question, why? I
yeah,
wonder why.
yeah. It's just being curious. It's a fun way to live,
Hmm.
right? It's the
It
most
is. It's
exciting
super
way to
fun.
live. To just sit on the side of like, I'm not gonna get to the finish line with anything. I just get to be
Hmm.
curious and ask questions my whole life, and like you said, get better and get better with like each try every time. It's a
Yep.
it's a cool place to operate from. Can you tell me about that one little sneaky microdose experiment that you said a colleague of
Yeah.
yours did? Because that was really cool, and it's cool to have like a real life experiment like that that's uncorrupted.
Yeah, so this was really interesting. It was about 3, 4 years ago that actually somebody tracked me down and they said, I have a really interesting case thing. And I think this is really important. And so this woman, her grandmother was in a care facility for Alzheimer's. And, she had heard Paul Stamets speak about the potential of microdosing. And so she put together some capsules or some mixture for her grandmother, and she visited her grandmother regularly in this care facility, and she started microdosing her grandmother, adding the mixture to her food. Or actually, I didn't really ever clarify exactly how she did it, but she told no one. She said she came from a family of people that did not use drugs,
Mm.
did not do drugs, and they would not have approved. And of course, she didn't tell the healthcare people. And about a week or two later, she's in visiting, and the care workers are like, I don't know what's up with your grandmother, but something's changed. Like, she's so much more reactive. She's smiling. She's getting up and walking. She's moving around. Like, there's something different about her. And then she kept doing it, and and then tracked me down and said, like, told me the story, and I was like, we got to study this. Like, we have to study this,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we've been working. It's 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 a lot of work to study, psilocybin.
Yeah, yeah.
It takes a lot, like, as you know, in Canada, we're only now at the point where there's companies that can provide
Mm-hmm.
these, and they can only provide them in the, in clinical trials, and really it's about providing the whole mushroom. Like right now, almost like there's 80 clinical trials registered on clinicaltrials.gov for psilocybin, and almost all of them are synthetic
Right.
psilocybin. And the challenge is nobody in the real world is taking synthetic psilocybin.
True.
They're taking psilocybin
Yeah.
mushrooms. And so the step it's we're really in this crazy situation where we really need to study psilocybin mushrooms
Yeah.
in people.
Yeah.
And yet you can't get it through the regulators. Or I mean, we can get it through the regulators, but it's just taking like so many steps, and we're like, there's 10,000 years of safe use. There's no one's ever died from psilocybin mushrooms.
Yeah.
People have had GI upsets, sure, they've gone to the hospital because they've been too intoxicated, and there's all sorts of things like that. But we have a drug, we have a single molecule drug model,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so, all about, purity, and is it exactly this percentage or that percentage, and I get it, like, this is Health Canada's job.
Yeah.
This is their job. Safety and is number one.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make sure you're safe. But we really do need to start studying these substances in the way that Canadians are taking it.
Right.
Otherwise, we're not doing our ethical duty. Like, if people are taking mushrooms and we're studying synthetic, we're not answering a question.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't line up. It's still two
Yeah.
separate things. I've never tried synthetic psilocybin. I'd be interested to see what the difference is. But you're right. It doesn't really make any sense. It's like creating a completely different drug almost, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, it doesn't have the entourage, right?
mm,
Like, that's the interesting thing, is that the mushroom has a whole bunch of
yeah.
constituents. So some of those may help with neuroplasticity, and some of them may help with anxiety.
Mm,
And so you get a whole bunch of things at the same time. Like, when you look at people that are microdosing, or like psilocybin mushrooms, and have Parkinson's, they're getting an improvement in the depression that comes along with Parkinson's, and they're also getting an improvement in the pill rolling, or the mask faces, or the stooped gait that they have.
right.
So you're getting a response on two different levels,
Mm-hmm.
like, which is, well, not that we're separate, like our physical is part of our mental, of course, but you're not going to necessarily get that with a single molecule that is trying to target, like, just this.
Yeah. And so it's like trying to fit the plant medicine world into the traditional pharmaceutical model that's been in
Yeah.
place, trying to take it down the same path of antidepressants and anti-anxieties, right?
Hmm.
To,
Yeah.
to find it in
And
the
I,
same
I
way.
think it's doable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's doable. I mean, it's doable to have a botanical drug. There are a few botanical drugs that have made it through the FDA. And it's not it's the nice thing is the technology is so much better now.
Mm,
Like, the mass spec, and like the way that we can analyze natural products
yeah.
is way better than it was even 10 years ago. And so I fully feel that we should be able to bring these full spectrum molecules, like the full entourage effect,
Mm-hmm.
to to the market.
Yeah.
I think we're getting smart enough that we should be able to do that.
Yeah. What would be the process for something like that? That might be a question for Health Canada, but like, yeah, why is it that, I know it's about safety, but why take
Mhm.
the whole fruiting body out of the picture and just try and like isolate?
Well, I think it just goes back to the philosophy of where we were, right? Like, we came from, like, this holistic
Mm,
place of herbs and collecting and foraging and mixing, and then we moved into what we would call modern medicine, and the molecule, and it kind of came to, like, reducing us to the biological model.
mm-hmm.
If you have this problem, you plug in this,
Yeah.
as opposed to, if you kind of think of maybe more the Eastern model of that, oh, okay, if you have your depression is not the same as that person's depression, so you might mix herbs or Chinese herbs or something a little bit differently for this person with their depression, and a little bit different for that. right? And so it's kind of like trying to bring it back to that and go, you know what, there's not one model, there's many models, and they'll all work.
Yeah.
If you're in the emerge and you need a medicine, you need to stop a bleed, like you need a clot thing, like you want that
Right.
now. And for a lot of things, you do want the medication the way it is, but I think there's room for everything.
Right.
If we're looking at whole human health and wellness, then we can, like you said, why not have whatever works?
Right.
And if that person just needs synthetic psilocybin, great, or just baeocystin, great, or just MDMA, great. But if they have a condition that would do better with the whole mushroom, or maybe even a certain species of a mushroom, like cyanescens versus cubensis, or all the other 100 plus different types of psilocybin mushrooms, then why not? Then that's what we need to be able to do, is take that through. And I think we can. Like the FDA has indicated that if you can standardize to one or two constituents within a botanical,
Yeah.
that they're okay with that.
Wow.
And so then you can standardize. You could standardize to the amount of psilocin in it, or the amount of baeocystin in it. And then if you always standardize to that, then and it would be very easy to bring that.
Huh.
Well, not easy, but it's possible
Yeah.
then to bring it to market.
Yeah, you just have to be able to show which constituents, exactly the amount that is involved in. Okay. Yeah, because that's really what they care about.
And that doesn't really replace natural. Like it doesn't replace people growing their own or people foraging for their own safely. It's just another continuation that maybe if you are wanting to take a certain dose, that you can take a certain dose. It doesn't mean that, I don't think anyone wants to argue that that you have to only get it that way, that you only get it from a pharmacy,
Right.
or only from a store. There's always going to be the option.
Yeah.
Like 90+% of people that are ever going to use psilocybin are going to use it in the whole form that they've grown themselves,
Yeah.
or they foraged, or they bought a sport kit or something like
Yeah.
that. There's just no way. There's no way that it'll be taken away from that.
Yeah, I agree. So where did it leave off with your colleague's grandmother there? You said you had to dig in and observe that study, but how did it all shake out?
Well, she was quite advanced dementia and still is, but walking. That's the thing is that the what I find interesting about the question, more on the way my brain thinks, is at what stage in that woman's life, if she had gotten in this intervention, would she not be in a home?
Right.
Right. So, I mean, without rigorous dosing somebody and comparisons, it's hard to know, but it's a good question, right? Is it good enough that she's at this stage and she is walking around and she is interacting? I think that's pretty good, but could we have done better? Could she do better? Could she be better at a better dose, at a different dose, at a different dose interval?
But no, she's kind of held her own at that stage. But like I said, I would really, if I was coming from a family of really strong dementia or Alzheimer's, I'd be wanting to start early. I'd want to be using whatever I can to keep my brain intact, keep my learning intact, and keep it to the higher level. So I think those are the kind of questions. And the nice thing about microdosing is that it's safe. It's safe. Like if a spiritual dose of 2.5 to 5 grams of mushrooms is safe, and then you're taking a much smaller dose at not every day, you wouldn't be taking it every day. You'd be taking it intermittently or on a different dosing schedule, then chances are we're not going to find that many issues with it. And even if we do, I mean, we have Tylenol over the counter that causes liver failure if you take it too much. There's risk benefits. There's no perfect anything, and I think we have the skill set and the knowledge to bring something like this forward safely, even if there are downsides from too much use, or it won't be for everyone.
Yeah. If the argument is it could be too risky, there's plenty of stuff that you can go into any pharmacy or grocery store, buy off the shelf, and kill yourself. Right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
if no one's ever overdosed from psilocybin, then it beats the safety. It's like ahead on the safety profile of most things that you can buy at a pharmacy. So it's not a great argument.
Yeah, it's not a good argument at all, because like I said, like there are so many medications that I have to watch send them for ECGs if I start them on the medication, because we know they prolong their QT. And and it's a risk benefit, right? It's an informed risk benefit. This will help you this, but it could cause this, right? And that's just what we need to do. There's no argument against it to use it. It's just like, how do you have an informed consent to use it?
Yeah. So that study with your colleague's grandmother, has that been released, and like, can people go and read that? I just think that's
because it's a case report. It's basically one person who did it, so it's not an actual study. But we did write up a whole protocol around it. We wrote up a whole Alzheimer's protocol, which we would love to do. The issue is then the process is still getting mushrooms okayed by Health Canada. Right. So once, and that's in process. There's a lot of companies in Canada working on that. There's a lot of companies in the US working on that to bring a whole mushroom product to Health Canada to say, this mushroom is standardized to X amount, and we can put it in a dosing regime, a dosing capsule. And as soon as that process is through with Health Canada, then we would be able to launch. And you have to do everything the same as you do with a drug. Like, you have to do your pilot studies, you have to do your phase 1, phase 2, your phase 3, and then your post-market phase 4. So it's millions of dollars to study a fungi that's been on this planet longer than we have.
Yeah. That we have countless personal accounts of people talking about how it's helped them change their lives, made them feel better.
But still, you still want to do it, right? Because we could be missing something. And that's Health Canada's job is the safety of Canadians. And so they're doing their job, and I'm glad they do, because they have stopped a lot of very dangerous drugs from getting to market. And that's their job. And their job is no different here. Anything we're going to sell to consumers in Canada has to be safe, period.
Yeah, true. Do you know anything about the health minister shutting down a bunch of the Section 56 exemptions? Is that in your wheelhouse?
Yeah. Well, like, as you know, you've interviewed a few of my colleagues that went through our psilocybin-assisted therapy program with the Roots to Thrive program. So when we did that, Dr. Val Masuda, who you talked to, we put those patients came through our program because they all had Section 56 exemptions. And so Section 56 exemptions come from an application from the patient. The patient is applying to the health minister to say, I would like access to this product or this item, in this case, psilocybin mushrooms. And it was at the health minister could, on a case-by-case basis, say yes or no. And for Dr. Bruce Tobin started this like 6-7 years ago, basically heard nothing, was basically ignored for 5 years, and eventually there was enough political pressure that the health minister made some decisions. And the whole reason we had to use the Section 56 was because previously, in about 2012, before one of the conservative governments, me as a physician, I could say, hey, Brett, I think mushrooms would be a good option for you, but they're not available. But I could apply through special access and make the argument that you had tried everything else and this would be a logical next step and it was safe. But in 2012, the government moved them out, and they moved them into Schedule J, which meant that you couldn't apply for them anymore with special access. And so then basically they said they had no medical use whatsoever, which of course was crap. Not true at all. It was completely wrong on every level. And so that's why we had to use the Section 56s. And so now that they have moved them back into SAP and into special access, they've been removed from. So it brings us back to that. Yeah. And it's a bit challenging. It's really challenging because with Section 56, with the exemptions we got, the patients could procure their own mushrooms from an own source. And the ones we ran through our program, we had 2 professional mycologists that positively identified that they were psilocybin cubensis mushrooms. because there are lookalikes. There's a Gallerina species that looks very similar, and so you need to make sure that you know what you got. And the Gallerinas are deadly. So, and they grow side by side in nature. So we had to make sure, obviously. So we had 2 professional mycologists positively identify them, and so.
Sorry, the mushrooms that you used in the studies, or in this study, were they organically or just foraged? They were grown in nature?
They were cultivated.
Cultivated.
Yeah,
And then you still had some
we had some anonymous donors that provided that grow, cultivate them, and then they provide them for medicinal uses. They grow them compassionately, kind of like if you think way back into, I don't know, the 90s when there were the compassion clubs for cannabis when it was still not legal yet. So similar, they're kind of working on the same thing, compassion. So we had 3 different people that were working on that level, and so that's where those patients got theirs from. But under SAP, what happens is now that application comes from the physician. So I write the application to Health Canada on behalf of my patient. And we've sent in our first 8, and they were all declined. So the health minister the Health Canada basically declined it, saying that they wanted us to show the clinical trials that showed that the mushrooms that we were going to give them had gone through clinical trials. So it was a little frustrating in this way, because they're saying provide us the clinical trials when they know full well, because they're Health Canada, that the clinical trials for these mushrooms haven't yet been done because it's still in process. Yet the patients we're applying for are people that are palliative. They don't have 5 years to wait. And that's why we're applying for SAP. So we're doing backflips and cartwheels to get these applications in, and hopefully what'll happen is there'll be enough pressure from Canadians saying, you know what, this is medicine, this needs to be provided. And sure, the clinical trials aren't done, but in this case, at end of life, you have no right to deny people the right to their own consciousness, to deal with their existential distress related to their palliative diagnosis. It's not like it's a newborn child or somebody young in life. It's like people that, they're old enough, they're mature enough to make these decisions, and they've asked for it. And I think it's unconscionable to deny it. Like, I know bureaucrats' jobs are hard. I don't envy Health Canada having to make these decisions, but to me, this is a no-brainer. It is morally not right to say no when people are at end of life and asking for access to therapies. It should just be a hell yes, is what it should be.
No kidding. Yeah, you're coming to the end. Try everything.
Yeah.
Try anything. Like especially if you have a therapist or a physician like yourself there, being like, I'm there for this person. I'm a medical doctor. I will be there with them. I don't see where the issue could lie, but that's the bureaucratic red tape that.
Yeah. Well, I think they're doing their best. Like, I don't want to. Yeah. I can't imagine being in that position. You kind of have rules and regulations, and then you got people saying, "Well, we want you to make an exception under this process," and there's no incentive when you're in a bureaucracy to stick your neck out, right? Right? There's only downside. Like, and this goes back to what we talked about really with social media, right? Like, look how quickly people attack for any wrong move, even no matter how well-meaning it was. And so, I kind of understand where they're coming from. And on the other side, as a physician that only wants the best for my patients, I'm like, we got to do better.
Yeah. You want people to do the right thing, regardless of if they have a fear of losing their job or whatever it is. If they know it's the right thing, but that's for each person to make their own decision on.
Yeah. We do need more courage, though. We need more courage across the board here.
I agree, and we'll get to that of action that people can take to help push this through. But what if for these 8 patients you started suggesting the use of some of the synthetic already, and you want to use whole food body muscle for the specialized program. But if that's the roadblock, would it be better to just try and shift to a different substance?
Well, Yeah, I didn't catch all the question. It kind of cut out a little bit on me, but I think we want to use what is best for the patient, regardless. And so I think, we can use psilocybin synthetic in clinical trials. We can't use it for SAP yet. Well, we don't have a source for it yet for SAP, Special Access Program. But I'm sorry, I didn't get the beginning of your question.
No, you answered it. It was just like, why not just use synthetic psilocybin if that's the roadblock? But I see where like you just kind of sent down a dead end road there, where they say you need to use something that's in a clinical trial, but they're not actually. There's no way to get a handle on what they have in a clinical trial, and what you want to use has no plan of going into a clinical trial.
Well,
so it's kind of just
we're going to get it in a clinical trial. I'm
optimistic.
We're going to make it happen. It's going to happen. It'll
Totally.
be in clinical trials for sure. But I think there's a couple things. Like one, yes, the clinical trials have to happen, and they're going to happen. And the clinical trials have to happen with real mushrooms, and they're going to happen. And the clinical trials are happening with synthetic. They're happening. Great. It's all going to happen. MDMA is going to continue. LSD is moving into more trials. DMT is in more trials. Ayahuasca, Wachuma. These things are ibogaine. All these things are moving into trials, and we need that. And we need compassionate access. We need, if you're at end of life and you've tried everything, or you have treatment-resistant depression and the likelihood of suicide is really high, we need to say yes. We need to have compassionate access. We can't. There's no reason to hold back on these when people have tried everything.
Yeah, and again, it's the physician that's writing in, right? It's not them asking for. Now it is, which is better. So that's like we talked earlier about, like it's always about doing better. So do you think that now we're back to the SAP program in Section 56 is kind of out as far as an option?
We've been told that they are denying all Section 56 exemptions. I think I got one of the last ones. I had actually the first person in Canada who actually got their SAP or their Section 56 for depression, not for end of life. I had one person that got that. But I was told that once the SAP changed at the beginning of January, they were going to deny all the Section 56s. And that seems to be what is happening. And additionally, we've had a whole bunch of Section 56s that were filed well before the SAP declined as well. And it's really what's hard for us is we don't know why one is being declined and one is not. Like it's not consistent. And so as a physician, it doesn't make sense to me as a physician why this one got it and that one didn't. And so yeah, we're kind of in this weird place. But I think once we have enough of the companies in Canada that can either supply synthetic or whole psilocybin mushrooms to Health Canada's standards, then it'll be full speed ahead. It'll be full speed ahead for at least for special access, and we'll still have to do the clinical trials. Like there's no way of getting around that. Yeah,
it sounds to me that one of the potential reasons, or maybe the biggest reason, why they are dumping the Section 56s and just focusing on special access is that they then have a say of where the supply comes from. Right?
Yeah.
Because like in Section 56, it's like, well, we don't want to, I was talking to Holly from Therasil the other day, she's like, we don't want to know where you got your mushrooms from, but you're welcome to use them for end of life distress. But just kind of like choose your medicine, but it's not coming from any of our verified sources, so enter at your own risk.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And maybe they didn't like that because that's a risky situation.
Yeah, well,
that could open up the government to liability, right?
Perhaps, and it's hard to say. Again, one thing that would be so helpful here would be transparency. I think what we'd really love the health minister and Health Canada to say this is what we want to do. Like just say it to all Canadians across the board, so we're not all having to go and have all these meetings with them. Just come out and say, this is our thinking. This is why we're making the decisions, and this is why we want you to hop through these hoops. And then if it's logical, then when things are logical, you're like, oh, we got it. We understand where you're thinking. And then be able to have this conversation, say, well, what about these mushrooms that have been on the planet forever? Like, how do we get to that in a way that you feel good, you're fulfilling your duty to Canadians, and us healthcare providers are fulfilling our duty to our patients? How do we find this ground that works for everyone? And so that's what we need. Like that, we're all speculating why they're making these decisions. And I don't want to speculate. I just want them to come out and say, hey, Dr. Kryskow, this is our thinking. And hey, all the doctors and all the nurse practitioners and all the other frontline healthcare workers that are trying to help their patients, we just want to know why. We're not trying to be sneaky. We don't want to be like ducking and dodging. We just want why. How do we move forward? How do we do good
Cards
care?
on the table.
Yeah. How do we do good care? Yeah.
Yeah, transparency in government. What an idea. I'm all with you on that one.
We're aspirational. We're aspirational.
Yeah, I know. I've got my own theories on. That thing. It's like, yeah, if it's logical, I'm like, well, maybe the government, a lot of stuff they do isn't logical, and that's why they're not able to fully share their transparency. Who knows? That's a conversation for a different time. It gets my conspiracy theory brain going a bit there on the government's decisions and what they're making, but it's neither here nor there.
Always the best course is to turn the lights on, transparency and bring lightness and shine light. So there's no shadows, there's no hidden stuff, there's no hidden agendas. It's always so. I think we should aspire to that, and we should demand that.
Yeah, and we should all stop wasting time stumbling around in the dark. Right. And another thing that we've talked about as well is like the WorkSafe disability and getting people back to work. I know that's something as well that you're very, very passionate about, especially coming from your background of working in as a firefighter, having friends in nursing, having friends as paramedics. The amount of time lost and money spent through like WorkSafe is a huge drain on the system. Right? Yeah. Time lost, money spent. So how do we present that as well as through just people getting better and be able to get back to work? Yeah. Is there anything that you can talk about of like structures that can be put in place maybe, or data that can be collected that will be presented one day as a case that this is also a big reason why this type of work is important and this therapy is important?
We've taken that very seriously in our program, in the Roots to Thrive program, and in fact we have a ton of research in our program, and quality improvement first off, and then data. And so we have been publishing. We published a case series report in the Frontiers of Psychiatry on Roots to Thrive in the ketamine portion. We're going to be publishing on the psilocybin portion as well. And to get that data out there to show the success rates that, our PTSD success rates are in the high 80s to 90%, depression, similar, anxiety, slightly lower, eating disorders, addictions. Additionally, we're also adding groups into our program, and they will be studied in substance use disorders. But back to what you're talking about, PTSD is ubiquitous in first responders and frontline healthcare workers, and there's a ton of people off work. There's a ton of people transitioning to long-term disability, and they don't need to be. So what we're really working with here is really trying to get the data out there so that we make it a lot easier for disability organizations like WorkSafe to fund and to let firefighters and paramedics come through our program, doctors, nurses. And the nurses union has already got it. Like they got it. Like early on in our program, a number of nurses came through our program, and they're back to work, and they're inspired, and they're healthy, and they're happy again. They're the same as what they were when they got, they're probably as healthy as they were when they got their acceptance into the nursing program, like that excitement, like they're healthy. And many of them have joined our team to make our team better. And they've made a really strong argument to the BC Nurses Union that this should be covered. And so almost every single cohort, there are now nurses funded to go through the program to get back to work, to get off a disability, and to regain their lives. And we're in conversations with WorkSafe for a number of firefighters to say, you know what? They've tried everything. They've done everything. Remember, they got the job because they were capable. They were strong and healthy, and the job has layered on trauma. And it's our responsibility, especially WorkSafe's, to say, okay, well, yeah, sure, they've tried the medications, they've tried these therapies, they've tried all this, they still have PTSD. So now put them in the damn program that has the 80% success rate. right?
Yeah.
Here we are. We're ready to do it, and we're gonna prove it over and over. We do have firefighters coming through that have gone through already and have paid, out of their own pocket to go through the program, because they're like, I know I can get better. I just need the right tool, and this is the right tool. And our program's not for everyone, but for those that it is, it's great. And so we're just going to keep publishing the data. We're going to keep filling in the cracks everywhere to make it easy for people. But yeah, like, you have to remember, like, when people go off on WorkSafe, for these kind of conditions, when they entered that job, I'm being redundant, I'm saying a second time, is that they were more than capable. That's why they got the job. And these jobs layer trauma on. And these people do remarkably well for a very, very long time. But when their cup of trauma gets full, we shouldn't be waiting. They should have access to programs like this and access to these medicines early, so that if you have a really terrible, like for nurses or doctors, like a really terrible delivery, like where maybe a baby dies or something, you should have access to this when you need it, so that you can repair and return whole, healthy, and better, hopefully. And we need to do better. We owe it to each other. And there's no reason not to at this point. The data is strong enough. The data around MDMA for PTSD is more than adequate. I feel right now with MDMA for PTSD, it's unethical to be withholding this. I think the data is that strong. It eclipses every other therapy out there. And certainly we're seeing that within our program, and I think we're going to see that very strongly with psilocybin and probably many other psychedelic-like medicines. And so we really have to ask ourselves, like, how much evidence do we need before it becomes unethical to withhold the therapy, especially if the safety has been established. If you've got safety and you've got efficacy, then how much we need to get it out there, because people can't wait. We can't have more people killing themselves. We can't have more people dying from unsafe drug supplies because they're trying to numb, their sexual assault or their trauma. We can do better, and we should do better.
And especially right now, like with 2 years into COVID, there's nurses leaving their jobs in hordes, right? Like this is a perfect time, like you said, it's getting to the point where it's unethical to hold people back from this type of therapy. And I would even triple down on your redundancy statement that most people who get into jobs as first responders and frontline healthcare workers, it comes from a very altruistic place. Like they get in because they want to save people, they want to help people, and being able to help people in those positions reset back to where they were when they started and still have all of the experience is such a huge gift to society. Right now you have people with experience that have that fire again of like why they got into it in the first place, and they're reconnected back to that purpose. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Well, we're going to keep publishing, and I meet with case managers every day, make the argument, say, come on, we need some courage here. Just say yes. Put your worker through. We'll prove it. It's not a problem. We stand behind what we do.
Yeah, amazing. Well, we're past the hour here. This has been probably one of the most educational conversations I've gone through. So I really appreciate your time here, and I would love for you to just maybe cap this off by telling everybody here that's listening or comes across this what they can do as an individual to help the mission here.
Right. Well, I think one of the first things people can do is bring up their learning level on this. Like, understand why these medicines aren't legal. Like, understand the war on drugs. Understand how it happened, why it happened, and that it was purely, it was propaganda. It was not based on science. It was not based on medicine. These are legitimate medicines. We should still be using them. Like, we shouldn't even be having this conversation. But we did have this 40 plus year hiatus of the war on drugs. And propaganda was very, very effective. Another reason to shut off social media nowadays. But even then, back there without social media, it was very effective. And that's all the stigmas related to propaganda. And so once you clear that out, once you understand the history of that, then we can move back into science and medicine. And ultimately, our political representatives are there to serve us. And I think what you can do is contact them and say that you support psychedelic medicine, or at least the research, or at least the curiosity, if you do support it. And not only the people that are in power, but also the opposition parties. They need to know that Canadians support this. Because political parties, remember, they're only going to stick their neck out if it's not going to get chopped off. And so when we lobbied Parliament, or the MPs at the beginning of last year around MAID, psilocybin access at end of life automatically. If you qualified for MAID, we thought, why don't you qualify for psilocybin? Yes, you should. And you know what? We had no opposition, but we lobbied all parties. Whether they were the opposition or not, you have to let everyone know that you support this. So, write a letter, write an email, phone everybody who's running in the election next time and say, I support it. I want you to support it. And then it will move. It will totally move. Yeah. They just need to know that that's what we support, and that's their job. Like I said, and again, being redundant, it's just we often forget to get a hold of the opposition. The opposition needs to know we support this too.
Yeah, because there's no guarantee that who you vote for, or your party that you vote for, is going to get into power. So let everyone know, right? Bring it through all ranks. Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Pam. This has been amazing.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's been an absolute delight.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I look forward to continuing and watching your journey and continue these conversations, and I'm sure we'll connect again soon.
I look forward to it. Have a fantastic weekend.